They came on a cold night, when the stars blinked like dying embers above a world that no longer believed in gods. The Empire's message wasn't wrapped in diplomacy. It was a demand, a final offer. Kneel or be turned to ash. General Carson stood on the observation deck of Titan Command, watching the transmission loop again. Holographic fire crackling from orbiting ships as cities crumbled beneath the Empire's demonstration of power. Their voice was artificial, devoid of empathy, soaked in condescension. Your kind has reached the limits of usefulness. Accept your place or become memory. Earth's politicians folded. Like wet paper, they buckled beneath the pressure. Treaties were signed in hidden rooms, resources offered, labor promised, and resistance labeled as terrorism. The media sang the Empire's praises, calling it the path to unity. But Carson remembered Mars. He remembered the screams as orbital platforms were wiped clean. He remembered his brother's voice cutting out mid-sentence, replaced by silence. The Empire called it containment. He called it murder. He didn't wear medals anymore. Not since the betrayal. Not since Earth's governments had declared his unit rogue and hunted his men like criminals for refusing to bow. But he hadn't stopped fighting. No, he'd just moved underground, far underground. "General, they've finished calibration on the stealth field," said Lieutenant Braddock, his voice sharp but uncertain. "Status of the fleet?" Carson asked, eyes locked on the stars. "Docked and ready. 6 dreadnoughts, 4 carriers, 30 cruisers and 200 warhounds. All black class, no markings, no flags." Carson turned slowly, his face carved from stone. "Good. No more speeches, no more warnings. If the Empire wants Earth, they're going to have to take it from the ashes." The Black Fleet hadn't been built with permission. It was forged in the outer belts, deep in forgotten shipyards guarded by loyalists and ghosts. They called it treason. Carson called it insurance. The command deck buzzed with quiet energy. Men and women, real soldiers, not politicians' lapdogs, moved with deadly precision. They knew what this meant. There'd be no backup, no mercy. The Empire had more ships, more tech, more reach. But Earth had rage, and Carson planned to weaponize every drop of it. A quiet chime echoed, a private signal. Braddock raised a brow. "Encrypted communications, it's her." Carson hesitated. "Put it through." A woman's face appeared, worn and angry. Admiral Reyna Locke, once his closest ally, now the Empire's appointed peacekeeper over Earth. "You don't have to do this, Carson. Stand down. We can negotiate terms." Carson's jaw tightened. "You're already wearing their colors, Reyna. Don't lecture me about loyalty. I'm trying to save what's left of humanity." He stepped closer to the hollow. "By turning us into workers and breeders for an alien regime?" Her face hardened. "You can't win." "I don't plan to. I plan to make them bleed." The screen cut out. Braddock looked uneasy. "So that's it?" Carson nodded. "We launch in 6 hours. Tell the fleet. We don't wait for the Empire to strike again. We hit first." The sirens began to hum. The underground hangars hissed open like the jaws of some ancient beast. Black ships, sharp as razors and invisible to scans, began to rise. Humanity wasn't surrendering. Humanity was roaring back. 6 hours later, the hangars rumbled as ancient engines ignited in sequence. The underground bay beneath the crust of Enceladus, Saturn's ice moon, shook with the controlled rage of warships born in secret. Each vessel of the Black Fleet was a sin, unauthorized, unregistered, untraceable, and each bore the silence of the dead. They had no national banners, no transmission codes, no diplomatic protocols. Just cold, matte black hulls with fusion cores that pulsed like angry hearts. General Carson stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Aegis Wraith, staring at the fleet's tactical map. It glowed with dozens of markers, each one a ghost ship ready to defy an empire that spanned 1,000 systems. His second-in-command, Braddock, adjusted his gloves nervously. "Fleet is go. Jump drive synchronization complete. Waiting on your mark, sir." Carson nodded, but didn't speak. He was watching a blip on the edge of the map. The Earth's solar defense array, now under Empire control. The last time he saw that station, it was commanded by real humans, loyal ones, before they were replaced, before they were executed. "Sir," Braddock pressed, "once we jump, there's no reversing course. If they detect us before we get past Saturn's edge—" "They won't," Carson said flatly. "Not with the stealth fields running full tilt. And if they do, we finish what they started." Braddock hesitated, then gave the nod. "Yes, sir." Carson looked around the bridge. Men and women in stolen uniforms, veterans from Mars, from Io, from the orbital riots of Europa. Survivors, ghosts. They all had their reasons. Some had lost family, others had lost homes. Carson had lost everything: his brother, his career, his faith in the species he once swore to protect. "Execute jump," he ordered. With a shudder, space bent around them. The stars stretched into lines, then darkness. The quiet between systems. The kind of quiet only old soldiers knew how to appreciate. It lasted for 2 minutes, then alarms. "Multiple pings, sir! We're being scanned! Scramblers caught it just in time!" Carson's eyes narrowed. "Empire?" "No, sir. Human signature, but Imperial tech. Earth's orbital guard." Carson clenched his fist. "Reyna." Admiral Reyna Locke had once commanded alongside him on Mars. She'd pulled him out of a collapsed station, bloodied and half-blind, carrying him on her back through a radiation storm. He remembered her cursing through the smoke, promising they'd never bow to foreign flags. And now? She was the one who'd signed the order branding him a traitor. "Activate countermeasures," Carson growled. Static filled the comms. Then a voice, crisp, measured, familiar. "Carson, I know you're out there." It was her. Carson said nothing. The bridge waited in silence. "You don't have to do this," Reyna continued. "Turn back. I'll erase the charges. We'll pretend this never happened." Braddock scoffed under his breath. Carson raised a hand. "Patch me through." Static cleared. "You still pretending you're the hero in all this?" Carson said, his voice cold. "Number I gave up on being a hero when Earth chose surrender over extinction." "Extinction?" Carson spat. "You think we're still alive under them? We're livestock, breeding stock for hybrids, data mines for their AIs. They're dissecting children in the name of evolutionary study, Reyna. How the hell can you call that survival?" Silence. Then her voice, quieter. "You saw what they did to Mars, to Titan, to Venus. We had no chance." "We did," Carson said. "We still do." "No, we don't. But what you're doing, you'll bring their full wrath. You won't just die, you'll get us all killed." Carson leaned forward. "Then let them come." He cut the line. The bridge burst into motion. "Tactical fleet split," Braddock called out. "Wraith-class cruisers taking lead, warhounds in flanking formation. We're on approach to the outer defensive grid." The solar defense ring loomed in the distance, a chain of ancient satellites and particle cannons rebuilt with Empire tech. It had once protected Earth. Now it kept its own people imprisoned. "Begin blackout approach," Carson ordered. "Scramblers active, no communications. We hit hard and fast." The dreadnought Aegis Wraith accelerated. Around it, the Black Fleet shimmered into position, moving like a predatory pack, invisible to most scans, silent and deliberate. They reached the outer perimeter in minutes. A low alert echoed across the ship. Then explosions. "Contact. Empire picket ship, small class. We're not invisible anymore." Carson didn't flinch. "Engage." The battle began in fire. 2 warhounds screamed past the dreadnought, unleashing barrage torpedoes that detonated against the Empire ship's hull. Shields flared. The picket ship returned fire, but it was too slow, too arrogant. It didn't expect humans to fight like this. Not anymore. In seconds, the Empire ship was gutted. Black steel tore through its belly. It exploded in silence, a fireball devoured by vacuum. "Keep moving," Carson shouted. "They'll know we're here now." They did. Within moments, the defense grid lit up. Plasma batteries turned outward. Empire dreadnoughts, stationed like watchmen in Earth's orbit, began to pivot. The Black Fleet accelerated. Carson watched the screen as one of their warhounds was caught mid-turn. A direct hit. No time to eject, no survivors. The ship blinked off the map. "Cavalier 4 is down," Braddock whispered. Carson didn't speak. The fleet kept pushing. Dreadnoughts hammering the defense grid. Warhounds darting in and out, drawing fire, baiting the Empire ships into pursuit. Then the real blow came. The Aegis Wraith turned upward, toward Earth's sky, and launched its payload. 4 tungsten rods, packed with kinetic boosters. A weapon older than the Empire itself. No explosions, just gravity and velocity. The rods punched through orbital stations, tearing them apart like wet tissue. One collided with the main communications array, silencing Earth's transmission towers. Carson felt the tremor in his bones. "Message delivered," he said quietly. Then a new sound, a shrill alert, something big. "Sir," Braddock breathed, "they've sent it." On the edge of the solar system, past Neptune, a new signature had entered the system. It was massive. A carrier. No, more than that. A capital command ship of the Empire's Inquisition class. It wasn't just here to destroy. It was here to conquer, indoctrinate, and enslave. "They've committed a flag," Braddock said. "They're taking us seriously now." Carson stared at the glowing red marker. "Good," he said. "They finally see us." The bridge grew quiet again. Braddock turned to him. "This is it, isn't it?" Carson nodded. "Once the flag enters Earth's orbit, we go full offensive. We bring every ship we've got. We show them what they forgot, that humanity doesn't break. We burn. We bleed. But we don't kneel." The stars warped around the advancing command ship, like light caught in the throat of a black hole. Even the hardened veterans aboard the Aegis Wraith fell silent when the Empire's flagship emerged from the darkness. It wasn't just large. It was unnatural. A vessel of that scale shouldn't move so smoothly, so silently, through space. Its hull shimmered like obsidian glass, jagged with irregular angles that seemed to defy physics. Energy pulses rippled along its sides, a sign that its core wasn't nuclear or fusion-based. It was something else, something alive. "Visual uplink established," Braddock said, his voice thin, "feeding into primary." The display bloomed to life. The flagship loomed across the screen like a city stretched through time, dwarfing the entire Black Fleet. Its name flickered in alien script. Then it translated. Eternal Verdict. Carson studied it with calm intensity, jaw clenched, arms folded behind his back. "Get me a heat signature," he ordered. "Sir?" "That ship's not just here for show. It's a trial. They named it Verdict for a reason. There's something on board, a tribunal or a weapon. Maybe both. Find it." The deck officers scrambled. The Eternal Verdict didn't fire. Not yet. It just floated, absorbing data, reading everything. "Why aren't they attacking?" Braddock asked. Carson didn't answer right away. His mind was racing. The Empire never hesitated in annihilation. So why the pause? Then it came. A ripple of energy burst from the verdict. Not a weapon. A transmission. The screen flashed, distorted, then stabilized. A face filled the view. Not human. Humanoid, yes, but wrong. Eyes too wide, pupils vertical and glowing, skin as pale as bone, textured like porcelain, without pores. A creature both serene and terrifying in its stillness. The voice that followed was musical, yet flat. Perfectly enunciated. General Elias Carson, born New Montreal Colony, commendation record, 87. Last known rank, Brigadier Supreme, status, dissident. Carson didn't blink. I am Judicator Orin of the Inner Order. This transmission is for your fleet. The Judicator tilted its head, like studying a bug. You have committed unauthorized mobilization of planetary-class weaponry. You have violated conditional sovereignty status. You have attacked sovereign empire vessels. These acts, as defined by the hierarchy, warrant extinction. Carson chuckled. Spare me the legal theater. You're a parasite floating in a stolen coffin, threatening a race you never understood. The Judicator didn't respond to the insult. Despite your crimes, a final offer is extended, it said. Surrender unconditionally. Submit your fleet. Return the vessels to containment. The human species will be reprocessed with minimal resistance. Refusal will result in total species filtration. Braddock leaned toward Carson, voice low. What the hell does filtration mean? Carson didn't have to answer. The screen changed. Images flashed in sequence. Children in camps, rows of them, tagged and color-coded. Labs filled with tanks, each holding limp, malformed human hybrids. Fields of dead cities turned into harvest centers. And finally, Earth, covered in empire towers. Its skies gray, patrolled by drones. No birds, no laughter, filtration, not war, harvest. The feed cut off. Carson stared at the blackened screen. A beat passed. 2. Then he turned. Transmit to the fleet, he said, voice hard. I want every captain on channel. Braddock keyed it in. The faces of black fleet commanders flickered into view. Battle-worn, grim-eyed, half of them running on rage alone. Carson didn't waste time. You saw what they are. You saw what they want. There's no misunderstanding now, no room for diplomacy. He took a breath, steady and cold. I didn't build this fleet for revenge. I built it because I knew this day would come. Because someone had to remember what it meant to be human. Not obedient, not compliant. Human. The screen stayed silent, but none disconnected. They want surrender. I say we give them the only answer they deserve. Load all torpedo banks. Prepare for a direct run. Direct? Someone asked. That's suicide. Carson nodded. It is, but it's better than waiting for a slow bleed. The eternal verdict is their godship. We take it out, they stumble. Maybe long enough for Earth to wake up. Maybe not, but I'll be damned if we die crawling. The channel closed. Carson turned to Braddock. Target the verdict's energy core. Find me weak spots. Aye. Across the Black Fleet, warships broke formation. They weren't retreating. They were forming into a wedge, an ancient tactic, but one the Empire had grown too confident to expect. Earth's rebellion wouldn't be sneaky. It would be loud, brutal, and furious. Then the first strike came. But not from them. The verdict unleashed a pulse, not a laser, not a missile, a wave. It passed through the fleet like a ripple through still water. On the bridge, lights flickered. Systems shuddered. Half the crew clutched their heads. Neural interference, Braddock screamed. It's in our minds. Carson staggered. Visions hit him. Memories twisted into nightmares. His brother, dead on Mars, not from explosion but dissected alive. His mother calling him coward. The fleet burning. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Override feed! Execute mental firewall!" The crew jolted. Pain slowly faded. Systems rebooted. Carson looked around. Some officers were still weeping silently. Others trembling. 2 hadn't survived the wave. Brains hemorrhaged from psychic overload. "That's their real weapon," Carson said hoarsely. "Psychotronic suppression." Braddock wiped blood from his lip. "They don't want to fight us. They want to erase us. Then we hit them harder." The Black Fleet surged forward. Anti-grav railguns began to fire in sequence. Torpedoes screamed across space. Warhounds raced ahead, weaving between death rays, releasing EMP bursts to scramble Empire tech. The Verdict reacted. Beams lashed out, white-hot arcs of particle destruction. One cruiser was sliced clean in half, bodies tumbling into space. Another disintegrated under a sustained beam. But they kept going. The Aegis Wraith fired a salvo of armor-piercing tungsten shells. One struck true, piercing the Verdict's outer shell, not deep but enough to scar it, enough to remind the Empire that humans fought dirty. "2 more dreadnoughts down," Braddock shouted. "But the core, sir, we have a reading. They've got a central thermal sink. If we breach it—" "We overload it," Carson finished. The Wraith turned hard, engines screaming. They raced through debris, dodging burning wreckage and firestorms of plasma. The core vent became visible, a massive ring on the Verdict's underside, glowing blue. "Lock in all torpedoes. Full payload. I want simultaneous impact." A targeting reticle blinked green. "Firing!" The Wraith unleashed hell. The torpedoes streaked toward the vent. 1, 2, 3 impacts. The fourth struck slightly off, but still hit close enough. A chain reaction burst through the system. Blue light turned orange, then red. The Verdict pulsed like a dying heart. Then it retaliated. Its central eye opened, a singularity cannon, a weapon that didn't destroy by force, but by erasing the matter around it. Carson saw it coming. "Evasive!" The cannon fired. The dreadnought Thane was the first to vanish. Not explode, just gone, like it had never existed. The Wraith was next in line. "Brace!" Carson shouted. The wave passed over them, but only grazed. Half the ship melted, half survived. Carson was thrown across the deck, blood in his mouth, ribs broken. Fire screamed across consoles. Braddock was missing, just gone from view. Carson pulled himself up. The Verdict was faltering. The core was unstable. "Emergency control to all ships," he croaked. "Push everything into one final strike. We don't leave this field standing." Around him, the fleet obeyed. The last warhounds turned kamikaze, diving into the Verdict's hull, exploding on impact. Torpedoes rained in. Plasma charges burned deeper into the ship's belly. Then, finally, the core cracked. The Verdict's heart exploded in a burst of light that tore across the void. Carson's last thought before losing consciousness wasn't of victory. It was of Earth, and whether it had watched the stars burn. The world was red when Carson woke. Red emergency lights flashed above him in slow, erratic pulses, and the silence was so deep it roared in his ears. He coughed. Something warm trickled down his cheek. Blood. Not surprising. What was surprising was that he was still breathing. The bridge of the Aegis Wraith looked like the inside of a ruined cathedral. Smoke hung heavy in the air, cables swung like nooses from the ceiling, and consoles were half melted or simply crushed. Glass crunched beneath his boots as he stood. Bodies were scattered across the floor. Some intact, some not. He found Braddock near the comms array, slumped over, still warm. A jagged piece of metal jutted from his side. Carson knelt and pressed 2 fingers to the neck. Nothing. The battle was over. For now. He staggered to the viewport. Outside, the remnants of the Black Fleet drifted among the stars like bones in a current. Most of the warhounds were gone. 3 dreadnoughts remained, damaged but functional. Carriers were dark, but sensors still flickered weakly. And then he saw it, what was left of the eternal Verdict. The Empire's command ship had split in 2. Its bottom half, where the core detonated, was missing entirely. The top half spun slowly, venting plasma, still glowing with radiation. Dozens of Empire vessels surrounded it, many dead, some limping back into distant orbit. A flagship didn't die quietly. It dragged its pride with it. But even with that victory, Carson knew the truth. They had only poked the beast. The real war hadn't even begun. He activated manual systems and linked into the Black Fleet's encrypted network. "Fleet status," he rasped. "Static." Then a series of fractured responses. "Thresher here. 60% hull breach. Minimal crew." "Vanguard's bridge is gone. Captain Silva's dead. We've got fires below deck." "Carson, this is Sparrow. We're venting Atmo. No navigation. Power reserves shot. We need evac." He closed the channel. There were too many dead to count, and too many alive to stop now. He stumbled back to Braddock's corpse and retrieved the emergency command key from his belt. He slid it into the backup control socket and rerouted power. The Wraith's systems flickered weakly back to life. The AI system, a simple, outdated unit they had installed to avoid detection by Empire code, booted with a slow whir. "Command recognized," it said in a flat, synthetic tone. "Awaiting instructions." Carson stared at the screen. His fingers hovered, then pressed slowly. "Compile all fleet data. I want telemetry from every ship. Casualties, firepower remaining, message logs. Copy it into a black box and prep it for launch." "Purpose?" the AI asked. "In case we die before they get here." "Probability, high." Carson didn't argue. He sat back in the scorched command chair. Every part of his body ached. Broken ribs, likely a concussion. But it didn't matter. He had one more task. He opened a direct line to Earth. He knew it was risky, but they had to know what had happened, what price was paid. The signal was weak. It routed through a dozen relays before reaching orbit. Then it hit Earth. "General Carson to any surviving resistance units. This is a priority transmission." He waited. Static. Then a voice. Faint. Shaky. "This is Delta Cell. Receiving you. Barely." He leaned forward. "The verdict is down. Repeat. The Empire's command ship has been destroyed. The Black Fleet has paid in blood, but we held the line. They'll come again. Stronger. Be ready." Another pause. Then a second voice. Stronger. "You insane bastard, I can't believe you did it." Carson froze. He knew that voice. "Reyna." "Where are you?" he demanded. "Still on Earth," she replied. "Still wearing their uniform. But I saw it, Carson. I saw the sky light up. I felt the tremor when they screamed. You gave them pain they never expected." "You still working for them?" "No," she said. "Not after this." He didn't respond. Didn't trust her. Not yet. But her voice softened. "There are people rising, Carson. You lit the fire. I've got cells from Toronto to Nairobi ready to move. But they'll come fast now. They'll come to make an example." He sighed. That was always the plan. She hesitated. "You're not going to survive this, are you?" He didn't lie. "No." The line went silent for a long moment. "Then I'll carry it," she said at last. "What you started." Carson cut the feed. He didn't have time for sentiment. The AI chirped. "New contact detected." His heart jumped. Another Empire ship? Number worse. Adjudicator's seed. His hands went cold. The seed wasn't a battleship. It was something worse. A ship-sized entity. Biological, artificial, and psychic all at once. It didn't carry weapons. It didn't need to. It infected systems, minds, beliefs. The Empire had sent it to retake control of Earth's population through indoctrination, not force. The ship's arrival would trigger global psychotropic broadcasts, turning resistance into docility. A living mind wash. "Distance?" he asked. 4 hours until lunar orbit," the AI replied. Carson stood. He had one chance. He couldn't stop it with guns, but he could stop it with a signal. He opened the black box system again, overrode the AI's caution protocol. He loaded everything: the fleet's data, the battle logs, the verdict's destruction, the visions of Earth's future under filtration. He compressed it into a single, unencrypted stream. Then he set it to broadcast, across every Empire frequency. No filters, no firewalls. "Are you certain?" the AI asked. "Doing so will expose this ship." "Yes." He looked at Braddock's body again. They deserve the truth. He pressed the key. Across the stars, Earth's people and the Empires began to see images of the verdict cracking apart, audio logs of Judicator Orin threatening extinction, footage from orbit showing the Black Fleet's final charge. Inside bunkers, homes, and barracks, civilians and soldiers alike watched. The Empire's control fractured, if only slightly. And for the first time in years, some of them felt something dangerous: hope. The Seed still approached, but Carson wasn't done. He sat at the helm, blood dripping from his chin, hand resting on the self-destruct trigger. As the Seed came into view, a monstrous silhouette made of pulses and skin, he whispered a final line to the void. "You wanted surrender. You got fire instead." Then he pressed the button, and the Aegis Wraith, the last black sword of humanity, erupted in a storm of light. The day Carson died, the skies above Earth turned red, not from blood, but from defiance. The moment his signal blazed across the Empire's frequencies, their perfect order shattered. People saw everything: the destruction of the eternal verdict, the sacrifice of the Black Fleet, the Empire's threats to humanity's existence. They saw the filtration labs, the breeding prisons, the educational camps for children too independent. For the first time, Earth's civilians understood they weren't part of a grand interstellar alliance. They were livestock being groomed for slaughter. And nothing breeds fire like betrayal. Delta Cell, hidden beneath the bones of the old Chicago grid, received the full data stream. Its leader, Merrick, watched it unfold on a cracked projection wall, fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. Beside him, his lieutenant, a scarred woman named Vera, whispered, "It's real." Merrick didn't speak. He didn't blink. He'd served in Earth's planetary guard before the surrender, before the politicians smiled and handed the world over in exchange for protection. He had lost 2 daughters in the integration program, told they were being taken to elite academies. They never came back. No bodies, no explanations, only silence. And now he knew why. "Mobilize every unit," Merrick said. "I don't care if they've only got knives and rocks. If they can breathe, they fight." Vera nodded and left to spread the word. Within hours, resistance groups long disconnected re-established links. Messages pulsed through tunnels, tapped into old sewage systems, buried power lines, and even encoded in the noise of radio shows and pirated music streams. The Black Fleet's sacrifice wasn't just a symbol, it was a call to arms. But not everyone who saw the message was inspired. Some felt fear, others, opportunity. In the gleaming towers of New Beijing sector, High Administrator Call stood before the Empire's local interface panel. His palms were slick with sweat. He had seen the footage too, and he knew what it meant. Humanity was waking up. He couldn't let that happen. The Empire had made him powerful. Rich. They had installed him as one of Earth's 20 planetary managers, rewarded for loyalty, obedience, and silence. His job was to ensure compliance, and he had done it well, until now. The transmission from Carson had triggered unrest, protests in the sectors, riots in the lower zones, armed skirmishes in the industrial rings. He turned to his assistant, a slender man named Kess with 2 bright eyes. "Where's the Seed?" Landed, northern Siberia quadrant. They're deploying the thought field as we speak. Good, Call muttered. We can still reverse this. Kess hesitated. Sir, if I may. What? The Resistance has a face now, Carson. The man who destroyed the verdict. His image is everywhere. Call scoffed. He's dead. Yes, that's why they'll worship him. Call turned away. The Seed's psychic broadcasts would soon smother all that. Thoughts of rebellion, freedom, pain. They'd all melt under the influence of the Empire's technology. It didn't need guns, just time. But time was running out. Across Earth, the Resistance began to strike. They moved in the shadows, hitting data hubs, blowing up surveillance towers, cutting into the Empire's neural net. Old soldiers emerged from hiding, people who remembered Earth before the surrender, people who remembered what it meant to fight. And then there was Reyna. She had returned to her old home in Nairobi, now a glimmering Empire hub built atop the ruins of her childhood. The Judicator's eyes were everywhere, but she had changed. After Carson's death, something in her snapped. She no longer wore their uniform, no longer smiled for their cameras. She walked the streets with a fake ID and a silent fury burning in her chest. Every day she met new cells, taught them tactics, shared the data Carson had bled to give them. One night she sat in the shadows of a bombed-out theater, looking over a tattered map with a teenage boy holding a makeshift rifle. "He was your friend?" the boy asked. She didn't look up. He was better than that. He was a man who knew how to die for something. The boy swallowed. "I'm scared." "You should be." Then she handed him a detonator. He didn't ask what it was for. That same night, 15 Empire drones exploded in the sky above South America. Their wreckage rained down over crops and domes. Citizens who had bowed their heads for years looked up, finally, in awe. But the Empire responded swiftly. Thought drones, machines that didn't kill but controlled, descended in force. They hovered above cities, spreading subsonic waves designed to suppress anger and fear, to replace them with numb loyalty. People stopped fighting. Some even turned on each other. That was when the betrayal began. Earth had always been divided. Even during the old wars, it had been a planet of factions, grudges, and selfish power plays. Now, as the Resistance grew, so did the traitors. Former allies turned snitches to save their families. Some leaders betrayed whole cells for a promise of elevation in the Empire's hierarchy. Others simply lost hope. In Cairo, one of the most powerful rebel leaders, Kanan, offered surrender in exchange for control of Sector 12. The Empire agreed. The next morning they bombed Sector 12 from orbit. Kanan was never found. Reyna heard the news with a blank stare. "This is how they win," she told Merrick, when they met again in an underground tunnel. "They don't fight. They divide. They make us betray each other." Marek, older and colder, didn't flinch. "Then we give them something to unify around." Reyna raised a brow. "You've got something in mind?" He nodded. "They've got the seed. We've got his voice." He opened a case. Inside was a pulse drive. "This carries Carson's last speech and the verdict footage, but encrypted. It'll bypass their jamming." She frowned. "You want to broadcast it again?" "Number, I want to broadcast it from orbit." She stared at him. "That's suicide." "Maybe. But if it plays above every major city at once, uncut, unedited, they can't block it. They can't explain it away, and maybe, just maybe, we remember who we are again." She took the drive. Her fingers trembled. "I'll do it." 3 days later, a scavenged Empire courier ship blasted off from a hidden hangar in the ruins of Kazakhstan. Inside, Reyna sat strapped in, The pulse drive secured, her hands shaking. The launch wasn't detected, not immediately, but it would be. The countdown ticked away. She sent one final message to Merrick. Tell them to remember Mars. He did, and Earth held its breath. The courier ship was little more than a rusted metal coffin stitched together with stolen parts and hope. Every piece of it was a lie. A counterfeit ID transponder, black market sublight engines, a heat-dampening mesh that flickered every time it caught solar reflection. But none of that mattered to Reyna. She had one job: get above Earth, bypass the Empire's jamming field, and trigger the transmission. The ship's cabin was narrow and dim, barely big enough for one person. Wires snaked through the walls like vines in a tomb. The cockpit smelled of burnt circuits and recycled air. She adjusted the controls manually. No AI, no Empire software. Every course correction had to be done by instinct and dead reckoning. But she'd flown worse. Outside the viewport, Earth loomed large and beautiful. Too beautiful for what it had become. A blue and green marble speckled with thin clouds, turning slowly beneath her. But she didn't see peace. She saw chains, cities humming with thought drones, families sedated into silence, old men and women who couldn't even remember what rebellion felt like. Approaching upper orbit, she muttered, flicking the nav switch. The ship's stabilizers sputtered, then held. She checked the drive. The encrypted pulse signal Carson had died to send. It was there, ready. A single trigger would deploy the data package across all major frequency bands, punching through the psychic net with raw human emotion. Grief, fire, defiance. "Let's wake them up," she whispered. Then her ship jolted. "Collision alert!" The console flashed. Her blood ran cold. A shadow passed across her viewport. Massive and elegant. Smooth metal curves, pulsing lights, no visible engines. It didn't move like a ship. It drifted like a thought. The seed. It had detected her. "Of course you'd be here," she whispered, voice shaking. The seed was the Empire's real terror. Not because of its size or speed or weapons, but because of what it did to you. It didn't fire. It reached inside. The ship's lights flickered. Static crackled over the speakers. Then came the voice, not over the radio, but inside her mind. "You should not be here, Reyna." She gritted her teeth. It wasn't speaking in words, not really. It was thought, injected into her brain like a toxin. "I know what you are," she said aloud. "You're not a god. You're a machine that got too clever. You are alone, dying, lost. You don't matter." "Carson mattered," she hissed. "He failed." "No," she said. "He hurt you." Silence. Then the ship shuddered again. Her vision blurred. The walls around her began to bend, twist. Her own reflection in the console glass began to move differently than she did. Her mind was being peeled apart. She slammed her fist into the control panel. The drive still blinked. Functional. You cannot stop us. Humanity is a broken code. You were given mercy. You rejected it. Mercy isn't slavery. Then something happened. The seed activated its core. Outside, it blossomed, literally opened like a flower of nightmares. Its center pulsed with dark red light, glowing like a wound in space. From it emanated waves, raw psychic pressure, distorting gravity, space, and consciousness. Reyna screamed. Memories slammed into her. Her mother crying when she was taken into Empire service. Carson bleeding out in a collapsing Martian bunker, whispering, "Don't forget who you are." The faces of those she had condemned during her time as an Empire enforcer. The boy in Nairobi with the makeshift rifle. And then, nothing. She floated in blackness. Alone. Until another voice came. Not the seed, not alien. Familiar. "Get up. Her eyes snapped open. Her ship was spinning, tumbling toward Earth's gravity well. Warning alarms blared. She didn't know if it was Carson's voice. Could have been a memory. Could have been madness. But it was enough. She grabbed the control yoke and fought. Her knuckles went white. The ship screeched in protest. Flames licked at the hull. But she pulled up, engines straining. The Seed pulsed again, trying to stop her. But she didn't stop. She reached the broadcast altitude, 30,000 feet above the Empire's communication array. Close enough. She flipped the final switch. Broadcast initiated. The panel blinked. Then, light. The transmission screamed across the Empire's networks, a cascade of forbidden footage. Carson standing before the Black Fleet. The eternal verdict exploding. Children in cages, drones harvesting organs, psychotropic labs turning minds to mush. Reyna's own confession. I served them. I believed them. But I was wrong. All of it, every second, every city, every dome, every station, they saw, people screamed. Some collapsed, overwhelmed by truth. Some stared in horror. Some grabbed weapons. And for the first time in years, a spontaneous riot broke out in the Empire's largest Earth dome, Sector Prime. Guards were dragged down, drones were hacked, civilians painted Carson's face on walls with fire. Reyna's ship spun out. The Seed, weakened by the psychic backlash of its failed suppression, tried to retreat, but too late. From Earth's surface, a stolen plasma cannon fired, a direct hit. The Seed trembled, its petals collapsed, its glow flickered. It fell, not destroyed, but broken. Reyna smiled through the blood in her mouth. Guess humans aren't as dumb as you thought. She lost consciousness before the crash. Back on Earth, Merrick watched from an old satellite feed. He saw the Seed fall. He saw the fires light up across domes and zones and cities. Get everyone moving, he told Vyra. The war's not over, but we've got something now. What's that? She asked. He looked toward the screen. Momentum. The world was on fire. And for once it wasn't because the Empire ordered it. It was because Earth had finally stood up. After Reyna's broadcast shattered the silence, every buried ember of rebellion reignited. Riots weren't coordinated. They were chaotic, angry, and often suicidal. But they were everywhere. Cities that had obeyed the Empire for years suddenly turned hostile. Drones were ambushed with homemade explosives. Surveillance towers toppled. Civilians overwhelmed patrol units with bare fists and stolen knives. The fear that had governed Earth since the surrender was now replaced by something else. Rage. In South Africa's industrial ring, Marek stood atop a scorched convoy of downed Empire transports, yelling into a megaphone made from salvaged parts. They think we'll tear each other apart, that we're too broken to fight as one. So prove them wrong. Don't fight for nations. Don't fight for flags. Fight for your damn right to breathe without permission. Behind him, dozens of fighters roared, some in old military gear, others in worker uniforms stained with oil and blood. Their weapons didn't match, and half of them wouldn't survive the week. But it didn't matter. The resistance was no longer a whisper. It was a scream. But far from the chaos, in the sealed sanctuaries beneath the Himalayas, the Empire watched and smiled. High Administrator Call stood in the sterile observation chamber of the Empire's Earth Command, watching the fires rise through satellite feeds. His expression was cold, calculating. On the wall behind him, the alien sigil of the Empire pulsed with soft light. Kess, his assistant, entered with a data slate. Riots in 33 sectors, drone losses at 18%, neural compliance rates falling. Call nodded slowly. Let them burn a little longer, then execute Directive Theta. Kess stiffened. That wasn't authorized. It is now. But Directive Theta is total Terra override. I know exactly what it is, Call snapped, and I'll be damned if I let this planet slip into full rebellion. He turned to the center of the chamber, where a small pedestal held a glowing orb, pulsing slowly. Inside it, an artificial seed, the Singularity Bloom, the Empire's final weapon against planetary disobedience. Not a bomb, a reset. The bloom wasn't made to kill every human. It was designed to collapse all synthetic infrastructure on a planet and overwrite the biosphere with Empire-coded DNA. Earth's machines, networks, and even its bacteria would be restructured. What survived would be optimized. What didn't was irrelevant. "Prep the bloom for planetary integration," Call ordered. "Let the rebels scream. Let them win their little battles. When the bloom activates, there won't be a damn thing left to fight for." Cass hesitated. "What about the cities under Empire control?" Call's eyes were flat. "They're already lost." Kess didn't argue again. Meanwhile, beneath the shattered remains of Nairobi's sky shield, Reyna limped into a resistance medical tent. Her face was half burned, left arm broken, and her lungs rattled from the crash. But she was alive. And Earth knew her name. The moment she stepped inside, people stood. No one said anything. They just looked. Some saluted, others just nodded. To them, she wasn't just a survivor. She was a symbol. A woman who once wore Empire silver, now dripping in blood, dragging the future behind her like a banner. Marek arrived minutes later, arms crossed, eyes searching. "You look like hell," he said quietly. "I've been worse," Reyna replied. He held out a data pad. "We found something. Deep Empire code. A satellite intercepted a burst. Signal tied to something called bloom activation." Her blood went cold. "The bloom?" she rasped. "You know it?" She nodded once, slowly. "It was a prototype. The worst kind of failsafe. Designed not to destroy humanity but replace it. They turn your DNA into something else. Something that obeys. How do we stop it?" "You don't," she whispered. "Not if it launches." A grim silence fell. Then Marek spoke. "What if we took it before they deployed it?" Reyna's face hardened. "You're talking about hitting the vault." He nodded. She swallowed hard. The vault was Earth Command's most heavily defended Empire facility, hidden beneath the Himalayas, protected by sentry bots, psychic barriers, and loyalists bred specifically to die before defecting. It housed the most dangerous Empire tech on Earth. Getting inside would be suicide, which meant they had to do it. 3 days later, a team of 50 resistance fighters stood inside a cavern near the base of the Himalayas, dressed in stolen Empire armor and powered suits held together with wires and curses. Reyna stood at the front, helmet under one arm, a plasma rifle in the other. Beside her, Marek adjusted his pulse launcher, face calm, but eyes sharp. "This is it," he said. "We breach. We grab the bloom core. We end it." A young woman in the back, barely 20, asked what everyone else was thinking. "And if we can't?" Reyna didn't flinch. "Then we die making sure they can't use it." The team moved like ghosts through the ice tunnels. They bypassed the first few sentry stations using stolen Empire IDs. But it didn't take long for the vault to realize the breach wasn't routine. Alarms shrieked. Turrets emerged from walls. Psychic dampeners buzzed through the air, trying to fracture thought. And still, they pushed forward. The hallways of the vault were alien, not built by human hands. The walls shifted subtly, breathing like flesh. Doors responded to brainwaves. Every step was like walking through a living nervous system. Reyna's team lost 7 in the first wave of counterfire. 10 more fell in the psychic corridor, brains liquefied by sensory overload. But they reached the core chamber. The bloom sat inside, a crystalline sphere hovering in a field of artificial gravity. Its energy pulsed through the chamber, humming with quiet menace. Guarding it was a humanoid figure. Not Call, not Kess, a custodian. part biological, part machine, fully Empire. Its voice was neither male nor female. "You do not belong." Reyna raised her rifle. "Neither do you." It moved, faster than anything she'd seen. 2 of her squad died before they could scream. But Merrick fired the launcher. The blast knocked the custodian back, stunned, not dead. Reyna ran. The bloom glowed, ready for activation. She slammed the override device Merrick had built onto the console. The chamber howled. The bloom stuttered. The custodian screamed, not in pain but rage. Reyna pressed the final trigger. A feedback loop surged through the vault's systems. Lights exploded. Gravity failed. The walls convulsed like a dying beast. She grabbed the bloom, its surface searing her skin, and turned. "Merrick, go!" He didn't hesitate. They ran. Behind them, the vault began to collapse. The mountain rumbled. Above, satellites flickered and shut down. Every signal the Empire used to control Earth began to fail. The bloom was disabled. Earth was still human. They called it the Long Silence. For 72 hours after the bloom was disabled, the skies above Earth stayed dark. No drones, no broadcasts, no enforcement patrols humming in the upper atmosphere. Just stars, unfiltered and untouched. Some believed the Empire was rallying for a massive retaliatory strike. Others feared they were already among them, planning something worse. But Merrick knew the truth. "They're not used to failure," he told Reyna, as they sat on the shattered edge of the vault crater. Smoke still rose from the collapsed mountain behind them. "They're waiting, trying to decide if Earth is worth the cost." Reyna didn't respond at first. Her skin was still burned from the bloom's core. Her ribs hadn't been reset properly. Her arm was in a brace fashioned from a splintered Empire rifle. And yet, she looked stronger than she had before. "If they don't come," she said at last, "that doesn't mean we've won. It just means we're next time's lesson." Merrick nodded slowly. "So we make Earth ready." The resistance didn't vanish with the Empire's silence. It adapted. Resistance cells formed a temporary council, 12 leaders from the largest regions, representing people who once didn't even speak the same language, let alone share trust. They called themselves the Coalition of Flame. They sent messages into deep space, encrypted declarations to other enslaved worlds that the Empire could be resisted, that the verdict had fallen, that Earth had bled and lived. It wasn't long before transmissions came back. From Mars, where surviving engineers had built a kill switch into an Empire mining rig and turned it into a makeshift war engine. From Europa, where cloned workers had revolted and taken over a biolab. From the Belt, where rogue ships with black hulls and human pride in their core whispered one name: Carson. He had become more than a general. He was legend, but legends didn't end wars. Weapons did, and the Empire was not gone. The quiet ended on day 4. High above Earth's orbit, a rift opened in space, twisting the stars into a spiral of unnatural light. The Empire had returned, but not with a fleet, with one ship. Massive, silent, silver and gold, its name etched into its hull, the Origin Chariot. Reyna, standing atop the new Nairobi watchpost, watched its arrival with narrowed eyes. "What is that?" someone asked. "A warning," she replied. "That ship doesn't come to fight. It comes to speak." And speak it did. The sky pulsed blue. Then a message played. Not through radios or satellites. Through thought. Every human, every man, woman, child felt it. "We have watched. We have measured. You killed our voice. You broke our seed. You will not be corrected. You are not savable. So we offer a gift, the only gift left for your kind. Oblivion." Then silence. Reyna gritted her teeth. "No fleet. Just judgment." She turned to Merrick. "They're going to glass us. One shot. Wipe the biosphere. No invasion. No speeches." Marek didn't flinch. Then we shoot first. He handed her a launch key. The Coalition had been building something, quietly under the remains of Carson's orbital project. An old black fleet cannon rig, barely functional, but retrofitted with everything they had left. The Hammer Arcade. It wasn't made to win wars. It was made to punch one hole. Just one. The launch rig opened above the equator. The Origin chariot began to charge, a halo of white light forming around its base. Gravity distorted across continents. Birds fell from the sky. The oceans began to tremble. But the Hammer fired first. A single spear of cobalt plasma surged upward, wrapped in magnetic armor, moving faster than light and heat combined. It struck the Origin's underbelly just as it prepared to fire. The explosion was silent, but the shockwave wasn't. Every city heard it, like the sky screaming in agony. The chariot cracked, then ruptured. It didn't burn. It folded, collapsing into itself in a black burst that sucked in its own debris, vanishing into the void. For a moment the stars blinked. Then Earth was still again. The war was over. There were no parades, no formal surrender. The Empire didn't send another ship. They didn't speak again. It was as if they'd simply turned away, not defeated, but repelled. And maybe for now, that was enough. A month later, Reyna stood before a field of broken statues, Empire effigies that once towered over the New York Dome. Now they lay in ruin. Beside her, children painted Carson's name across the walls in crimson and silver. She turned as Marek approached, a satellite tablet in his hand. "Another signal from Mars," he said. "They want us to send them genetic backups. Apparently, the Empire torched their recovery banks before retreating." Reyna nodded. "We'll send it." He paused. "And there's this." He showed her a transmission. One voice. Male. Tired. Human. "If you're out there, Earth, Europa, Mars, I was on the Thresher. We survived. The Verdict's debris threw us past Saturn. We found shelter on a rogue moon. I don't know if Carson made it, but I saw his last orders. I saw what he died for. We're coming home." Reyna stared at the screen. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just nodded once, firmly. Then she looked up at the stars. Carson had lit the match. Reyna had carried the flame. Now Earth burned with memory, not of pain, but of purpose. And the galaxy would never forget the world that dared to say no.